Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our latest episode of Musical Musings, airing every Wednesday at 1 p.m. We broadcast this program from Rajmakon, University of Technology, Pranikon. And I will be bringing this program to you in two parts. For the first part of the program, I will introduce an artist to you, or a band, and a song. We will discuss a little bit about the artist, and then we will discuss a little bit about the song. Kind of the background of the song, as well as its main theme, is what the song is about. Then we will go ahead and listen to the song, and for the second part of our program, we will analyze the lyrics to the song. We will especially look at anything that might be difficult to understand, difficult vocabulary, slang, idioms, anything like that. Then we'll get to the news and the latest updates from the university, as always.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for the Musical Musings program. I'm an American English teacher here at Rajmakon University of Technology, Pranikon, and I've been here for over 7 years, almost 8 full years teaching, and I do enjoy incorporating music into my classroom sometimes. In fact, you might hear my voice is a little bit scratchy because we've been doing some music in my classroom even today. Some singing, and they have to listen. My students have to listen to the lyrics, understand what the song is about, figure that out. So we do some musical activities in my classroom. And so naturally, I am bringing you this musical program. So for today's episode, we are going to be doing the song With or Without You by the band U2. Before we get to the song, let's discuss a little bit about U2. I'm rather surprised that I have not yet done U2. This is our, probably about our 85th program, maybe our 80th program. We've been going for about 90 weeks, a little bit more than that, but we have missed a few episodes here or there. So we're at about 80 weeks, maybe a little more. We have not done U2. U2 is one of the greatest artists of all time. In fact, they actually have a ranking of this, and I think it was from Rolling Stone magazine. Don't quote me on that. It could be from Billboard could have done a rating like this. I'm not sure where it comes from. I believe it's Rolling Stone. And U2 is rated number 22 of all time. And this is on a list of the greatest artists, not the greatest bands. What's the difference there? A list of greatest artists is going to include solo performers who technically aren't really bands. So, for example, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, people like that are going to be on that list. So number 22 is really high because you're going to have the bands on there like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, all of those guys, Rush, all of those bands. And then you're also going to have the solo artists. And I'm not sure how far back they go, but they probably are going to include the entire rock era. So they're probably going to go all the way back to Elvis Presley at least. They may not include someone like Frank Sinatra, who was more of a pop singer from back at that time, but they may. I didn't look at the whole list. But it's going to include most famous performers. And it should. It's the greatest artist of all time. So number 22 on the list is very high. In fact, during their peak of popularity, I would say U2 was far and away the most popular band in the whole world. So I'm kind of surprised that I have not done U2 yet. And when I was looking at their background, it actually surprised me a little bit. I was surprised to see that they formed in 1976 in Dublin, Ireland. One thing we've seen from a lot of these bands, I mentioned this in many weeks, is that like their first album sometimes has some of their best hits on them, which actually surprised me before I started doing this show. Lately, we've seen that a little less with the performers we've talked about. And that is, in fact, not going to be the case here with U2. In fact, what's really weird with U2 is it took them a long time to even put out their first album. And then their first album did not contain a lot of their bigger hits. It was, I'm not actually even sure which album it was, their second or their third, but it came out like a couple of years after their first album. That's when they really started catching on. And because they went several years without actually putting out an album, that's why I was surprised when I heard that they've been around since 1976. I didn't know they had been around that long. Now, to be fair, they didn't go by the name U2. They started out with a different name. They actually changed their name twice. They had one original name, changed it, then they changed that name, and then they were U2 by 1979, I want to say. It could have been 1978. I didn't write that in my notes. It was 79 or 78 that they became U2. And they formed in Dublin. Most folks familiar with the band know that, but you may not be familiar with the band. They are an Irish band. Dublin is the capital of Ireland. So they formed in Dublin, Ireland. I can tell you I have been to Dublin. And I believe I have seen their lead singer's home there. I don't know. Someone told me it was his house. I don't know. It was a very big house on a cliff overlooking the water. So it was a really nice house. It could have been his. And I'm sure he owns many houses. The lead singer is very famous. If you're familiar with U2, you know the lead singer. His name is Bono. Bono is very famous because he does a lot of charitable work as well. The only thing that sometimes he gets in a little bit of trouble for is some of the charities are may sometimes be a little bit politically oriented, and so sometimes he gets especially people who are on the conservative side of politics, sometimes he'll get them a little bit upset. But for the most part, he's a good person. He does a lot of good things, a lot of things for charity to help people out. And he can afford to. He's extremely rich. As I said, U2 was one of the most famous bands ever. They were the most famous band in the world, at least for a time. But again, I was a little surprised to see how early they formed, 1976. But they didn't do their first album. As I mentioned, it took a while. The first album was not until 1980. But their first really big album that started getting them rolling was, I believe, in 1983. I believe that's the correct year. It's 83. And again, I didn't look at a list of all of their albums when I was preparing for this, so I don't know if that was their second, third, fourth album. Probably not their fourth, as that would have only been their third or fourth year since producing their first album. But as we have seen with, like, the band Bread, who we did a few weeks ago, there are some bands that put out albums so frequently it's more than one a year. So it could be their fourth album. But it's probably their second or third album. That's when they really started taking off. And I would say that their peak was probably in the mid-'80s. From about 1983 to 1987. I do have to say probably, though, because coming off of their peak popularity, they came down quite slowly. And what I mean by that is they remained extremely popular well into the 90s. In fact, one of their top-selling albums was in 1991 called Achtung Baby. That came out in 1991. I'm almost certain, I didn't look at the ratings of their albums either. That's another thing I didn't look at. I'm almost certain that was not their number one album of all time, but it was one of their top albums. And that came out in the 90s. So they were still very popular well into the 1990s. And in fact, they still perform today. I'll be honest with you, when they're performing, they don't really make the news much anymore, so I'm not aware of any tours that they're on. They may be, I don't know. They may be on tour now. I know they came out with a new single just a couple years ago, so they're still working on new music. I know they're still together. The only reason I'm not sure if they're still touring and things like that is just because Bono especially does a lot of other things. Like I said, he's involved in a lot of charities and a lot of other. He's got a million things he's working on, so he probably doesn't have time to be doing U2 just full time all the time, writing music, practicing, making albums, touring, all that stuff. So, but they are, at least technically, still together. As I said, they put out a new song just a couple years ago. And actually, we're only just starting 2025, so it might have been just over a year ago. I don't remember when during the year in 2023 that song came out. So, but so it may only be about a year ago that they came out with their last song. So they're still going. They're still around. And as I mentioned, they're ranked the number 22 greatest artists of all time. And like I said, that may not sound that high, number 22, you got 21 people ahead of you. But when you consider, we're talking about of all time, and this is artists, not bands. And there is a difference there. When you're talking about bands, you're not going to include solo artists. So you're not going to include someone like Cher, or Michael Jackson, or Whitney Houston, or Janet Jackson, or anyone like that. None of those people are going to be included in that. If you're talking about bands, we're talking about artists. So this is going to be bands and solo performers. So 22 is really very high on the list. I mean, if you made the top 50, that would be very high on the list. Okay, so the song we're doing from them today is With or Without You. And I'll be honest with you, because they're so popular, I didn't even know which song to pick from them. I had a list, and I'm going to give you the list at the end. And the list is going to be a very short list of all of their most famous songs. And even that is still only a list of about 6 songs. And those are the really famous hits that I could think of. They have a ton of hits. And I could have easily picked another song by them. Their song, I don't want to mention too many of their songs. I usually save that till the end. But for example, their song Pride, which is also known as In the Name of Love, was really very popular. They have several other songs that were really popular because obviously they were the most popular band in the world for a time. So they got a lot of popular songs. All right, so I could have picked anything. We're doing With or Without You. And I don't know, when I went through the lyrics preparing for our program today, I thought, maybe I should have picked a different song. The lyrics are pretty simple. There's not going to be a lot to talk about in the second half of our program here. It's pretty simple with the lyrics. But, I also thought, let's just go ahead and do it. First of all, it's a good song. It's a good song. One of my favorite songs by them. It's a good song. Number 2, eventually, we're almost been doing this for 100 weeks now. Eventually, we're going to have to come around to bands a second or third time. We've only done that a couple times so far. I think there's maybe 2 bands we've done twice so far. 2 artists we've done twice. We're going to have to do a little bit more of that as time goes on. So, we got a whole list of songs from U2 to get to. So we can come back to them later and do a different song later. So we'll just go with or Without You for today. Okay, so With or Without You. This one comes from their 5th album, which was in 1987. That's another reason why I said I don't think the 1983 album was like their 4th album. Because their 5th album wasn't until 1987. So that was probably like their 2nd album. Could have been their 3rd when they first started getting popular, that album in 1983. So in 1987, that's when this song came out on their 5th album, which was called Joshua Tree. And I'm a little bit old. I remember when that came out. I was pretty young when it came out. I mean, I was in high school. But I remember when that came out, and that was very popular. That was a very popular album when Joshua Tree came out. I was kind of a latecomer to liking U2, so I did not buy that album at the time. Was not paying that much attention to it, but I heard about it enough that I knew it was popular. And With or Without You has a very interesting backstory to this song. They actually started writing it in 1985. It took them 2 years to write it because they hated the way it sounded originally. In fact, several of the band members, including their lead guitarist, who's called Edge, he just gave up on it. He was like, the heck with this. We're not doing this stupid song. Because they kept working on it, 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 and they hated it, hated it, hated it, hated it, hated it. Nothing they did made it any better. But Bono refused to kind of give up on it, so he worked on it with his friend Gavin Friday. I'll be honest with you, I don't know who that is. That's from the story. I picked it up during my research of this song. I don't know him. That's his name, Gavin Friday. So Bono worked on it with his friend Gavin Friday. And they finally got the song into a condition where the rest of the band thought it was, okay, this might work. Went into the studio. They recorded it. And it actually worked out better than they thought. When those band members that hated it listened to it back, they actually really loved it. So now the band actually really likes this song. But originally they hated it. They hated it so much that some of the band members didn't want to do it. They gave up on it. And it took them 2 years to write it. But in the end, they liked it. Okay, so what's it about? Well, you can imagine with the name With or Without You, it's about whether you have someone or you don't have someone. So it's about a troubled relationship. Some people, like a big newspaper in America, went over the song because it was so popular at the time. They went over the song and they put what they thought it meant. And they tied it to religion as well. Maybe. I will tell you this. I mentioned in many of our programs that it's kind of up to the listener to interpret. I will tell you that these words, this was another reason I was kind of like, do we really want to do this song? I mean, I basically think I know what the song means because if you do research on it, that's what it says it means. The words are not very clear. I think this song got popular because it sounds good. It's music. It sounds good. It's a good song. Not because of its lyrics. The chorus's lyrics are a little bit catchy, but it's really just the name of the song. Just with or without you, with or without you. It just repeats that over and over and over again. It's as simple as that. But that's a little catchy. So the lyrics aren't terrible. It's just trying to figure out exactly what it means is a little hard. But there aren't a lot of lyrics. Like I said, it'll be fairly quick in our second half of our program. But let's go ahead and get to it. I have talked enough for the first part of our program. Let's get to the song. As always, those of you who are joining us on YouTube, we'll put the link up in the upper right-hand corner for you. Go ahead, click on the link for the video of this song. Then when it's done, just click on back over here for our analysis of the lyrics. Everyone else listening, radio, streaming, however you're listening, we can embed the actual music. So if you're just listening, you should be able to listen just fine. All right, let's get to the song.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, that was With or Without You by U2. Again, what's it about? I mentioned in the first part of our program, who really knows? Supposedly, it's about a troubled relationship. With or without you kind of makes sense for that. But some of the words in here, a little hard to understand. So what we're probably going to be analyzing more is just kind of like what the idioms might mean. or what a word might mean. We're not going to try to analyze the whole song itself too much. A lot of times when I say that, I kind of end up doing that anyway because, you want to understand what the song's about. So we might end up doing a little bit of that, but we're going to try to stick to just, okay, we're doing this in Thailand. It's kind of like an English lesson, right? We're trying to learn some English through our songs. So let's look at the words, the idioms, try to figure out what they mean. So we start out right away. See the stone set in your eyes. See the thorn twist in your side. What in the world does that mean? Okay, so right off the bat, I'm not sure entirely what the meaning of this is, like in relation to the bigger song. But what I will tell, and these aren't like normal English idioms either. But what I will tell you is that in English, we do have some idioms with things like having something in your eye. So the stone set in your eye, and thorns have sort of a meaning in Western culture. So see the thorn twist in your side. In fact, I think that's one of the parts that newspaper I mentioned was relating this to religion. I don't think it does, but it could. That's where I said thorns sort of have a meaning in Western culture, and it does tie into religion a little bit because most Westerners, Christianity is the most popular religion, and thorns, people who are Christians, they celebrate Christ, and he wore a crown of thorns at one point, and that's a very popular imagery there. So what we're talking about here is whatever the bigger meaning is for the whole song. We're just talking about the person that he's singing to. Presumably, this is the person with whom he has a bad relationship. This person's going through trouble, whatever it is, going through pain. Stone set in your eyes, thorn twist in your side. A thorn, by the way, in case you don't even know that word, you know how some plants have sharp things on them that you touch them and it hurts? Ow, ow, ow. That's a thorn. 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 So it says, see the stone set in your eyes, see the thorn twist in your side. I wait for you. Okay, so see, this is that with or without you. So this is troubled relationship. Doesn't mean it's always bad. So he's waiting for her. Presuming it's a her. He's waiting for her. Okay? Sleight of hand and twist of fate. On a bed of nails she makes me wait. And I wait without you. Okay, sleight of hand. That's like when a magician does a trick. That's what that means. Sleight of hand. When they do something really fast with their hands. So fast that you don't notice it. That's sleight of hand. Twist of fate. Fate is like something happens because it's predetermined, so there's nothing you can do about it. So that's kind of what it's talking about here. It's like he can't do anything about this. It's either magic or it's fate or whatever. It's like he has no control over this. On a bed of nails, she makes me wait. Okay, a bed of nails. That is exactly what it sounds like. Again, this is something popular in Western culture. Not that Westerners do this, but there are actually some Eastern cultures where they do this, like in India and things like that. And it's, but it's not that common. It's not like a real thing that's part of Indian culture. But what I mean by it's part of Western culture is the Westerners are fascinated by it. So even though it's not a big thing in Eastern cultures, like here in Thailand, who's laying on a bed of nails? Nobody. The few times that Westerners have seen it, they're like, oh, amazed by it. So it's a popular image in Western culture. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Nails. You know what a nail is? The big, long, sharp thing you use to put pieces of wood together. You hammer it. That's what a nail is. So all these nails are sticking up on this bed, and people actually lay on a bed of nails. So obviously what he's talking about here is he's not comfortable. He's in pain, waiting for her. So on a bed of nails, she makes me wait. So he's not happy, he's not comfortable, he's in pain, waiting for her. But he waits anyway. He says, and I wait without you. And then he says, with or without you, with or without you. Okay, then we go on. Through the storm, we reach the shore. You give it all, but I want more. And I'm waiting for you. Okay, so this is both good and bad. Through the storm, we reach the shore. So in other words, through the storm, this is again, not like some famous idiom that we use, but the concept is, I guess I would say, idiomatic. And what I mean by that is it's like an idiom. When we talk about going through a storm, we talk about the storms of life. In other words, going through all their troubles. So when it says they reach the shore, in other words, they have successfully gotten through their troubles. But only sort of. Because then he says, you give it all, but I want more. In other words, there may be only a certain amount that this woman is willing to give. Maybe she's been through pain too much in the past, so she's not able to open up her heart fully. So she kind of keeps herself closed off a little bit. And he wants more from her. So maybe she keeps some distance because of the pain. We don't really know the whole story. Again, I'm not going to try to explain the whole song. It is a little tricky. Different people have different interpretations. Like I said, that newspaper thinks it's about religion, and most people don't think it's that. Whatever. What I can tell you is that this is about is the like what the words mean. Through the storm, we reach the shore. So in other words, through all of their problems, they've gotten through them. And now they're safely done with that. But only sort of. Because even though they're here at this point, he still wants more of her. In other words, more from their relationship. And then he says, and I'm waiting for you. Now, when he says that this time, again, I'm not going to get too much into the meanings here, but I do think he means that he's waiting for her to be able to do more. Because here, they do sound like they are together. And that's why the song is with or without you. In fact, that's the very next line. He goes, with or without you, with or without you. I can't live with or without you, which is an interesting line. He's saying he can't live with her, but he can't live without her. Because they have so many problems. She's not giving him enough. We just heard that, right? You give it all, but I want more. He can't deal with that. He doesn't want that. So he can't live with her. But he loves her. Can't live without her. Can't live with or without you. So when he said he's waiting for her, he means he's waiting for her to open up more. This time. Other times he might mean that she's not there. Like in the first verse, she wasn't there. That was without you. Now it's with you. Okay? So now we've had one without, one with, and now that's why he's saying I can't live with or without you. Okay, we continue on, and then we get into something which is sort of part of a chorus, kind of, because he repeats it a little bit later as well. But I don't know if you'd say it's a chorus. There's not really a solid chorus in here, other than him repeating with or without you. But anyway, he sings, and you give yourself away. And then he just repeats it. And you give yourself your way, and you give, and you give, and you give yourself away. Now, honestly, I'm not sure exactly what he means here. But when someone says that you're giving when someone is giving themselves away, it can mean two different things. It can mean they're revealing who they are as a person. Or it can mean that they're actually giving of themselves too much. Like in a bad way. Usually it's good to give of yourself. Like help people out, do things for people, be nice to people. But sometimes people can be so desperate for attention that they're willing to give or do anything. And they can get themselves into trouble. For example, if you think of people that sleep around with a lot of other people, That would be giving yourself away. And they may be doing that because they have low self-esteem, and so they really want to be loved. And so I'm guessing this is what we're talking about here. Again, not clear. I'm not going to try to analyze everything in here as far as the bigger meaning. But just generally, when someone is giving themselves away, it either means that they're revealing the truth about themselves, like, you've given yourself away. If someone says that, that means you've revealed yourself. I understand your secret now. I know what you're trying to hide. You've revealed yourself. Or it means you're being too generous with yourself in a bad way, in a way that might get you into trouble. And just given the nature of this song, I think that's what it is. The example I gave to you is like if you're sleeping around with a lot of people. That's giving yourself away. I'm not saying that he means that this woman is sleeping around. I mean, it could. I don't know. I'm not sure what it means. Like I said, I'm not going to try to analyze every little detail here. But it just means being too generous. Okay, and we continue on, and we're almost done already. My hands are tied, my body bruised. She got me with nothing to win and nothing else to lose. Okay. So when we say your hands are tied, that actually is an idiom. Your hands are tied means there's nothing you can do. Your hands are tied. You can't do anything. There's nothing he can do about it. My body bruised. He probably doesn't mean that he's physically bruised. He's emotionally bruised. He's beaten up by this relationship, all these problems they have. He feels beaten up. He's worn out. In fact, this kind of ends sadly, since this is the last verse, because he says she got me with nothing to win and nothing else to lose. All right, this means exactly what it says, but it's a saying we use. I've got nothing to win, or I've got nothing else to lose. What does it actually mean? You have to kind of stop and think about it for a minute. You got nothing to win means you have nothing to gain. In fact, a lot of times we'll say it that way. There's nothing for me to gain. I have nothing to gain. In other words, continuing with this relationship or trying to continue with it, there's no good for him by doing that. I guess because he knows the problems are going to continue. So he knows he's never going to be happy. There's nothing for him to gain. And yet he's put so much into it. He's almost lost everything that there's nothing else to lose. He's already lost everything. He's invested everything into this relationship. And so that's why he almost, it's kind of implied by saying with or without you. He's still including with. He's almost willing to continue trying. Because he can't lose anything more. He's done. He's lost everything. Nothing else to lose. So it's kind of a sad ending, really, when you think about it. Nothing to win, nothing else to lose. Kind of a sad song there. And that's really the end of it. He repeats, give yourself away line. And then after that, he just goes back into with or without you, with or without you. I can't live with or without you. And we repeat that. And that's it. That's the end of the song. Okay, so that is With or Without You by U2. Now, as far as any other songs by them, you know I always like to talk about other songs by these bands. As I told you, there's many. We have, from U2, we have Pride, New Year's Day, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, Sunday, Bloody Sunday, It's a Beautiful Day, Where the Streets Have No Name. Those are really just like their top end songs. I think some people might say New Year's Day doesn't belong on that list. I kind of like it. I put it in the list. I mean, it's a popular song. Probably one of their top maybe 20. But I think some people might put it down at the lower end of that top 20 list. And since I'm only listing like 6 songs here, some people would say it doesn't belong on that list. And With or Without You would probably be among these as well. I believe With or Without You is not their top hit of all time. I'm not actually sure what is. It might be Pride, which is also known as In the Name of Love. In the Name of Love. That's a really popular song. That might be their number 1 song of all time. Not sure. The reason I'm not sure is because some of these other ones were pretty popular. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Very popular. Pretty sure Sunday Bloody Sunday wouldn't be their number one song. But it was also very popular. Good song. Anyway, they have a lot more even than just this. So if you liked this song, I recommend going and listening to a lot more of their music. They have a ton of big hits. What I've listed here is just a short list of some of their most popular songs. So again, it's U2. It's easy to spell. That U is not like Y-O-U. No, it's just U. Just U and the number 2. And 2 is not spelled out. It's just 2, the number. U2. Easiest band name to spell. So you want to go listen to more of their music, go look up U2. The only thing you might get confusing is if you search on U2, that's also the name of a type of... there are also things with that name. I was going to tell you what, but there's actually more than one thing. There are multiple things that go by that name. So you'll have to maybe search on U2 Band or U2 Music. Okay, so that's U2. And today we did With or Without You. All right, thank you for joining us for today's Musical Musings program. Please stay with us now. And also, please tune back in next week for another great song. And also, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Musical, music.